welcome to another episode of Capital Record. I am your host, David Bonson, and I am very grateful for the opportunity to host this podcast and spend each week taking an hour to talk through with a guest about these messages of a free and virtuous society that are so important to me. And some weeks we have economists, other weeks we have academics, other weeks we might have financiers. There's, I think, a pretty diversified set of people, but always in the realm of public discourse, trying to intelligently discuss matters impacting the cause of a free economy. Well, one of the things we wanted to do when we started the podcast was bring on actual business leaders. Maybe they're not ideologues, maybe they're not trained economists, but they are people that might have a perspective, sometimes friendly and sometimes not, in the realm of business, finance, entrepreneurialism, and so forth and so on. These things are so integral to the cause of free enterprise that we want to have more guests in that realm. And today we have such a guest. He is not just a businessman, a very well-known billionaire businessman who happens to be in so many different industries. It would be hard to imagine someone having a better feel for what is happening across multiple touch points of the economy. He is the owner of WABC Radio, which was an acquisition he just made a few years ago. He has his own radio show there, but WABC itself, the station he owns, is one of the major stations in the tri-state area, but also has been CEO for many decades now of a holding company that includes a large chain of grocery stores, a real estate company, aviation company, oil and gas. So this is someone who has his finger on the pulse of the economy, who loves America, is an immigrant who loves the concept of the American experiment. He ran for mayor in New York City a number of years ago, didn't prevail, but is a major force in New York politics and someone I hold in very high regard. So we're going to just have a simple conversation, walk through some of the things that someone like John sees impacting the American economy, impacting our political discourse, get his take on a number of issues. I really hope you enjoy the conversation. And with that, I want to bring on John Catsimatidis. So with that said, allow me to welcome for the first time to Capital Record, John Catsimatidis. John, welcome to National Review's Capital Record.
Well, thank you for having me. And what our mission is to tell all the American people and tell all New Yorkers and everybody the truth about what's going on in our world. And my personal mission is that by buying WABC Radio is to tell the truth and nothing but the truth. And my instructions to every one of our reporters is tell the truth to the American people because they deserve to know the truth.
Well, one of the things we try to do with this podcast, why we started it at National Review and why we've had as guests so many times some of our mutual friends, Larry Kudlow and Art Laffer and Stephen Moore and Steve Forbes, and a lot of these guys that are also, like yourself, patriots, truth tellers. But when it comes to matters of the economy, are believers in the idea of freedom. I know your story a little bit, but I think listeners would really love to hear a bit about your own personal journey and why you yourself are such an advocate of the free enterprise system.
Well, it comes back to my two grandfathers, both my mother's father and my father's father, both came to America in 1913. And they came to America looking for the streets paved with gold. Like all of the immigrants in that period of time came to America. And unfortunately, my father's father, my grandfather on my father's side, died in the pandemic of 1918. And my mother's father lived, and I got to meet him when when my father came to America in 1949, and he took me to my first Yankee game in New York. And I remember, he wasn't very wealthy. We were sitting in the upper deck of Yankee Stadium, and Mickey Mantle was playing, and my grandfather says, "I like that guy," and the biggest thing I was impressed with going to my first baseball game was how green the grass was in Yankee Stadium, and so it's all about. And I remember I went from since I was an immigrant when I was about 5 years old or 6 years old, probably. I went from my citizenship papers. And I remember going down there and being asked questions, and I remember having to swear allegiance to the country. And I did that. And my mother did that. And my father did that. And I'm very, very much concerned. I am pro-immigration. We need immigrants, we need people, but we need people that are loyal to our country. They're loyal to America. So all I'm saying to all our U.S. senators and everybody involved is, okay, we want immigration, but let's have checks and balances. Who's coming and going? And I don't want the Democrats saying, oh, the Republicans are wearing white shoes. They don't want immigration. Yes, we want immigration. But I think the fact is that we have to know that we're not bringing in terrorists. We're not bringing in people with diseases the same way Ellis Island was. And I worked with on the Ellis Island Foundation originally, helping Ellis Island, and people went through Ellis Island. They were checked by doctors, and they were checked by everybody, and they were asked to swear allegiance to the United States of America. And I'm saying maybe along the Mexican borders, we could put 5 or 6 or 7 Ellis Island type operations where we can check the people coming in. So I think the attitude on the Republicans' end, instead of arguing, is that yes, we are pro-immigration. I think that will help the Republican Party a great deal. We are pro-immigration, but we want to make sure that we're having good people that are willing to work hard for our country come in.
Well, when we talk about people being pro-America and having allegiance to the country, it strikes me that not only do we want to see that out of the immigrants coming in, but the ideas of America, and I come back to this notion of a market economy, seems to be increasingly rejected by even homegrown Americans, those that were born and raised here, that live under the very prosperity that America's free enterprise system has produced. There seems to be an increasing rejection of it in the media, in academia, and in the political sphere, such as the Senate, where you're trying to have an influence. I'm curious if you generally feel optimistic about America's relationship to free enterprise, or are you worried that we're abandoning some of those principles that have been able to make so many people, immigrants and otherwise, so successful in our country?
Well, we used to say there's something rotten in Denmark. What I've been saying on my radio show lately is something rotten in Washington. And the fact is, our American industries, especially the oil industry, that can make North America energy independent, is under attack by the White House. And I think it's horrible what's going on, because right now, on Trump's last year, that we were producing 13.2 million barrels a day. Canada was shipping us 4.5 million barrels a day. We are capable of producing 15 million barrels a day, and Canada is willing to go up to 5.5 million barrels a day. So that makes it 20.5 million barrels a day, and make energy in North America self-sufficient. You know what happens? The price, when we flood the market with, or even the press release that we're going to do that, and we flood the market, the price of oil will come down to 60, 65 again. And what we're doing, because we're not fixing, and the price, inflation will go down to zero again, and food inflation will go down to zero again. And I disagree with our mutual friends, the economists. He says, oh, raise the interest rates. Well, we're raising the interest rates and we're killing the whole real estate industry. So instead of fixing the problem of why the problem exists, instead of fixing the problem, I'm a fixer. We are breaking the real estate industry. So, I mean, our U.S. senators or Congress should understand that problem, that it's fixable. America does not need a recession. We are forcing the recession to happen by raising those interest rates and destroying another industry.
Well, John, you're in a friendly environment on this podcast because as a conservative economist, I've been saying the same thing you just said for a long time through this whole period. I don't want the Fed to have interest rates at 0%, but putting it to a place that is trying to create a recession on the belief that the Fed needs to make a boom happen and make a bust happen, kill real estate, kill this, kill jobs because of an inflation that is entirely supply side driven. Myself, you, Judy Shelton, John Tamney, we've had some really great people on the podcast that all agree with you.
And, I'm happy to hear that because I hate to have dinner with my best friends and argue with them. I say to them over dinner, I said, let's fix the problem of why the problem exists instead of creating a new problem.
Well, and this boom bust cycle is sort of what the Fed has ended up putting us into. And you're exactly right. They try to fix one problem by creating another. And what we never get off of is a cycle of dependence on all the stuff the Fed or Washington is doing. And like you, I want to put the fate of the economy in the hands of the entrepreneur, in the hands of business owners, in the hands of people conducting normal affairs in their lives. You're involved in a lot of businesses and industries. You own WABC Radio. You've been involved in media, the oil business, the grocery store business. You have access optics to a lot of
we're in the real estate
in the economy right now.
So we're in the real estate business too. So we have the pulse right on the ground, right on the front line, the pulse of what's going on in oil, petroleum, in real estate, and in food. So we have the pulse of what's going on, and I've been on some of the media, some on Fox News and Fox Business, and I hate to say it, but I've been right for the last 12 months on every interview I had.
Yeah, well, I often feel the same, although I do Fox Business so often that I can't be right all the time because I give them too many chances for me to be wrong. But you were on with me on Varney's show a few weeks back, and you made this same point you're making now about energy. I think this ESG movement is dangerous. I think it is hurting American business, hurting jobs. I think it's ideological, not environmental. And the ideology is a more Marxian one than an American one.
Not only we talked about what they're doing with the Fed, haven't talked about what they're doing with the banks. The SEC is putting pressure on the banks for the ESG movement, and the major banks are putting very senior people on running it, where they don't want to lend money to fossil fuel companies. They want to create electric cars and destroy the fossil fuel companies, not make the electric cars a competitive alternative.
Well, and it seems to me that this moment is really testing ESG because Putin's having his way in Europe. Germany's inability to get the gas they need to power electricity shortages in the UK, our own issues with gas prices. They've come down a bit. They're still too high. You talked about North American energy independence. The Biden administration came in and they did exactly what they promised. They said they didn't care about energy independence and they worked to unwind it. Do you think that that movement and that effort and the ESG moment is taking on shots right now because of the crisis in Europe, because of inadequate supply of natural gas and crude oil, prices way too high? Is the pendulum shifting towards our side?
Well, I think that General Motors and Ford, if their CEOs are going along with the White House to turn down their gas-powered cars and to create only battery-powered cars, where, by the way, all the batteries are made in China. And China was short lithium to make the batteries, so we gave them Afghanistan.
Yeah.
I mean, it's horrible what's going on. I would short General Motors stock if they're going that way.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to tell these
already.
days.
I mean, if they make stupid decisions like that,
Well, John, let me ask you a question as a business leader that I've asked several others on the podcast and I deal with in my own business. How can you tell when they mean it? I see the CEOs of these companies say stupid things all the time, and oftentimes, thank God, they don't follow up with action. It's just virtue signaling and posturing. How can we tell when these corporate CEOs are just giving lip service to this stuff versus when they're really going to do dumb things and hurt their own business and the American economy?
I'm trying to teach my son how to replace me. I've been a CEO for 54 years, and it's time for me to be replaced because just in case a bus hits me. And you know what I told my son this morning? I said, look at the major companies in our country that went bankrupt. Look at Polaroid, Kodak, Xerox, General Electric was on the verge, IT&T on the verge, AT&T made all those acquisitions on the verge. The only stock my father bought when he was a busboy and making $100 a week, he kept buying AT&T stock and he did well with it. But the AT&T of 50 years ago is not the AT&T of today.
Yeah.
And the same thing with Verizon. They went off and did so many other things that made them look like a conglomerate, but the analysts never understood where the money is coming from, what they're really doing.
So right now, do you think that the economy is headed to a recession?
I think the possibility exists. I don't think the American people want a recession. If the White House does the right things, no. And it's not necessary. But if the White House does the wrong things, they could force it into it, especially by continuing to raise interest rates instead of solving the problem. And, with gasoline being down, usage being down like 10, 15%, prices of oil going down, if we just made an announcement that we're going to create more product in North America, the price will go all the way down and inflation goes away.
So when we talk about the inflation story, aside from energy, which is the area you've been really preaching great stuff on, the supply chain has been a big issue. The Fed doesn't have control of the supply chain. They can raise interest rates all you want. You're not going to get ports reopened in Long Beach, was a line I kept using last year. Is the supply chain easing now? Are you seeing in some of your businesses that we're having an easier time getting imports into the country?
California has put so many restrictions on truck drivers. They're creating, what was the old expression when me and you were growing up? They're creating their own banana peel. And it's horrible. If you had a governor that straightened out California, California would flourish.
Well, my concern, John, is that if we get rid of our governor in California, it may be because he's going to the White House. So we can't have that happen either.
Well, somebody has to run, and it's just,
Well,
it gets to me
my
once in
two
a while.
states. You're very involved in New York politics. You ran for mayor a number of years ago. I myself am a New York and California taxpayer. I live half the time in each state. Let's just talk about New York. What's got to happen there to get things fixed, both in our beloved Manhattan, but also in the state of New York at large?
Well, our governor right now is Kathy Hochul. She is a tough Irish woman from the Buffalo area, Rochester area of New York. She has to put her foot down, and she has the ability to get rid of some of these Soros-elected DAs, district attorneys, and to get the problem fixed. And the Democratic Party has not, the common sense Democrats, there's quite a few of them, don't have the courage, don't have the testicles to stand up against the regressive Democrats. And I said, why? I was just talking before to my friend Governor Rendell from Philadelphia, who was a common sense Democrat, and I asked him the same question. And they need to have the courage to stand up. And common sense Democrats, common sense Republicans, the way Newt Gingrich sat down with Bill Clinton and worked out of the problems as far as America is concerned, not as far as Democrats and Republicans are concerned. Common sense. Then we could save the country. And in New York City, I've said to them, there's 8.5 million New Yorkers that want to live safely in New York City. We have 66 million tourists that want to visit New York City and fill up the hotels. There, right now, our office buildings only have 37 or 47, I remember forgetting the number, occupied. They want to come back to work, but they don't want to take the subways. The crime. There's 3,000 violent criminals on the streets of New York that are creating 98% of the crime. For whom do the tolls for the bells ring or whatever? Is it the 8.5 million New Yorkers that love New York and want to live a normal life? Or the 3,000 violent criminals that are in the streets instead of being in jail? And I said this to many elected officials in Albany. Why are you supporting the violent criminals? If they had, at what point do you throw the key away? After 3, 4, 5, 10 violent attacks? Violent. I'm not saying the person that stole a loaf of bread that is hungry to throw him away in jail. I'm telling the violent criminals, enough is enough, guys. And they hear me, they agree with me, but they don't have the courage to go against that woke culture, the regressive culture, and that is the problem. So when I talk to my listeners, and we have maybe 1 million listeners on my show between 5 and 6 every day, is I said to them, look, if they don't have the courage, whoever, before you vote, September and October are key, crucial before the election. Before you vote, ask the question, look at them right in the eyes and say, whom do you trust to keep you safe after November 8th election?
Well, it's a great question, and it isn't one that I think is all that different from our topic of economics, because I think that a free society with a functioning market economy presupposes rule of law. It presupposes justice. It presupposes safety. And we can't have a functioning market economy with the conditions that you're talking about. A city like New York is a great example where the media, the financial industry, the technology industry, there is so much robust activity. It's the greatest city in the world. And yet to allow 2,000, 3,000 violent hooligans to create that disarray, it's completely inexcusable.
Understood. We talked about New York and the crime problems, and if we don't straighten out New York, I said to the state senators and the state assembly, I'm not yelling about taxes. At least we'll pay the taxes, but keep us safe. But I'm going to give you a statistic you never hear anyplace. I'm sitting here in New York City right now when I'm being interviewed, and between the state budget of 220 billion and the New York City budget of 100 billion, I'm sitting here we're paying 320 billion in taxes for 20 million people in New York State. Florida has 20 million people, give or take. Their entire budget for the whole state of Florida is 100 billion. Where's the difference? 3-1. Where's the other 220 billion difference between 320 for 20 million people and 100 in Florida? And I'm going to give you one more statistic. A few days ago, I had breakfast with the former Attorney General Bill Barr and Cardinal Dolan. And what was Bill Barr's worry? The Catholic schools. It cost us $7,500 a year for Catholic schools to educate the kids. The New York Board of Education, or whatever we call them these days, is spending $26,000, $27,000 per student. 98% of the students in Catholic schools go to college. Only half of those in the regular public schools. Our education system is under attack, and our kids are suffering. And the other thing I just had in my office, the Attorney General from Virginia, and he talked about the education of our kids, and he talked about the stuff that is being taught to our kids in public schools that mothers and fathers haven't realized until lately. So our education system is under attack. Our borders are under attack. Our citizens are under attack. Our law and order system is under attack. America is under attack. And I'll close on a couple of things, and you can ask me more if you like. That 2,400 years ago, 400 BC, the Chinese wrote The Art of War, Sun Tzu. I propose America is under attack, and we don't really know it. The average person doesn't know it. We're not smart enough for the average person to know it. And our borders are under attack. All our systems are under attack. And the artist Sun Tzu says how to defeat your enemy without them knowing they're at war and they're being defeated. So unless the American people wake up, put their foot down, and say, enough is enough, guys. We don't want war with China. Look, they're smart people. We want to coexist. We want them to buy our products. We want us to buy their products. But you know how World War II started with Japan. We cut out their oil. See, they don't teach that in schools. Japan panicked. And Roosevelt knew there was going to be a war. He never told the people of Pearl Harbor. Do your homework, study it. Japan reached the how do I say it nicely, the FU level, that they're going to be cut out of oil. They're going to have no oil. And the only way, and they were urged by Hitler to join World War II, and they attacked Pearl Harbor because we were squeezing them with oil. History repeats itself. What is Putin doing with Germany with Britain. They said all of a sudden Putin says, our pipeline is down. We can't ship you any gas. So our country, our world is in trouble, sir. And the American people have to realize that we're in trouble. And whom do you trust after November 8th?
Well, John, I can't thank you enough for your time. I know your busy schedule. You have your own radio show, WABC, the finest conservative talk radio in the country. You have such a busy schedule with your own business life that to come on Capitol Record is something I appreciate. I don't take for granted. I hold you in the highest regard personally and professionally. I thank you for joining us at National Review's Capitol Record.
Well, thank you very much, and God bless America. And let's keep, the Greeks and Italians have another expression, macchia di retesida, have 14 eyes, because you need 14 eyes to make sure you know what's going on around you.
I love it. I love it. Thanks so much, John. Well, thank you again for listening to Capitol Record. I do hope you enjoyed the conversation with John. I would have loved to have gone deeper into the element about his critique of Fed policy and the belief that manipulating the cost of capital higher right now is the solution to inflation when he sees such a clear and present danger around the supply side of our energy epidemic. Obviously, we've done deeper dives in that topic with guests like Renee Anino and Samuel Rines and so forth. We cover the energy spectrum. We just more recently had Cal Beisner on talking about a lot of the modern environmental threats. When you get into monetary policy, John Tamney, Judy Shelton have been recent guests. They share the view that what the Fed's now doing on the other side of the hill is kind of dangerous and silly the way it was when they were running down the hill the other way. So I appreciated his take on that. Those numbers are what they are about New York, $320 billion of revenue needed for their 20 million people when $100 billion of revenue is needed for the 20 million in Florida. But then, of course, John is a passionate guy, and he talked his thoughts on immigration and foreign policy and a number of the other issues. We live in politically tribal and volatile times. I hope you appreciated John's perspective. We look forward to come back to you next week with another guest, another conversation that I can promise you will be focused on what we always want to be focused on here at Capitol Record: defending free enterprise, defending capital markets, and advancing the cause of a free and virtuous society. Thank you for listening to National Review's Capitol Record.